Simply Scuba presents the Deco Stop podcast.
Hi everybody and welcome to the Deco Stop podcast from Simply Scuba. I'm Mark, a former dive instructor, and I'm here to talk about scuba diving and stuff. So jumping straight in with website updates for Simply Scuba. So starting off with our European warehouse in Venlo in the Netherlands. It's just on like the border between the Netherlands and Germany. Is open and is shipping out orders. It's still fairly early days with sort of stock levels and whatnot. But yeah, if you're a European listener and you're placing orders through Simply Scuba, then chances are that your order will be shipped out of our new European warehouse, which is quite nice. Instead of coming from the UK, it just helps to sort of eliminate a lot of the sort of Brexit issues, all that kind of stuff, paperwork going backwards and forwards. But yeah, that has sort of officially started shipping orders, and yeah, they're saying they're getting a lot of boxes in and shipping them out. So yeah, it's doing very, very well. The Garmin G1 video, I released that on, when was that, Thursday? Garmin managed to sort of get me out a sample of their newest descent dive computer, the G1 Solar, and yeah, I shot the video and uploaded that on Thursday. It's a lovely little dive computer. It was... It's one of those, it's very Garmin in that on the surface you sort of see everything that you need, but then there's just so much more to it. And then you connect it to an app, and then there's all sorts of other stuff. There's just so much to it. It's a lovely thing. Definitely check the video out. And if you're in the market for a new dive computer or like multi-sports computer, yeah, G1 is definitely a game changer. Definitely worth checking out. And there's two different versions. You get the Descent G1, but you also get the Descent G1 Solar, which has a teeny tiny little solar panel on the front, so it recharges as it goes. But yeah, this thing is nuts with GPS and like heart rate monitor and all that kind of stuff. It's made to be something that you wear all the time. And it's nice and compact. It's not a big bulky thing like some of these like dive watches can be, so that you can't even fit like a what do you call it? A shirt cuff over it. It is too snug because you've got this big bulky dive computer on your wrist, but this one is just really nice and sleek and rugged at the same time. But yeah, anyway, head over to YouTube or head over to the Simply Scuba website and you can read more about it, because there's just so much information on that thing, and just anyway, yeah, check it out. There will be a link down in the description below. The Apeks Lifeline Halo Spool. This is one that I've wanted to sort of talk about for a while now, because this is very different. If you listened in sort of previous weeks and have been sort of watching the Instagram, Apeks have sort of released a new version of their Lifeline spools, like a 2.0 version, slightly upgraded from the previous Lifeline spools, which were always very popular. But with it, they also added the Halo. So the Halo is basically a finger spool, but if you imagine that internal sort of finger hole is like 2, maybe even 3 times larger, and yeah, it's a bit like a halo. It's 30 meters of line, the same line and leader that you get on the regular Lifelines. I'm going to say line a lot in this, I'm afraid, but yeah, it's just got that larger central hole. So this is, I think it's more designed for like cold water diving, where if you've got clunky gloves on, you've got that sort of relatively delicate finger hole in the middle of normal finger spools. Whereas this is just this huge big hole so that you can grab hold of it and you have good control. Anodized aluminium as the rest of the range, so it's very strong, but it's still lightweight. It's a lot smaller than I was expecting. When I saw the photos of it, I'd seen very similar things in flying kites. You can get these like kite lined spools, whatever you call it, which are just these kind of donut shaped halos. And yeah, so it's very quick to line up, but those are quite large. This one is still quite nice and compact, so you can still stow it away in a pocket, but because it's got that larger sort of central spindle, 30 meters winds on a lot faster, so it's still quite nice and compact. And I've never really seen anything like this before in the dive industry, but yeah, just something different. So if you do struggle with like finger spools, diving in cold waters, or just with your hands, if you struggle with dexterity and you don't want like a ratchet reel or something, it might be worth looking at the Apeks Lifeline Halo spool. It's just something different. Again, I uploaded a video for it, so if you search online, if not, there'll be a link down in the description below, so you can check that out. We also received first batch of the updated version of the Oceanic Viper fins, the Viper 2 fins. So since the sort of takeover, because basically, who's it, Hewish, who own like Atomic and whatnot, they bought out Oceanic and sort of Hollis a few years back. And they've since sort of just like merged technology, as it were, sharing technology, and just upgraded things. And one of the things that just arrived is the Viper 2 fins. So they've changed them ever so slightly. They're still a budget-friendly fin, a good all-rounder, dual material. So you get the rigid sections and the softer sections, but they've like polished certain things to reduce friction. They've increased the efficiency. So there's both an open heel and a full foot version for like serious scuba diving or for just sort of snorkeling or easy scuba diving. They've both just dropped in a bunch of different colors as well. And Apeks WTX sets. So these are quite nice. I've had a few questions on AskMark recently about sort of building backplate setups, and I think one this week was actually, should I buy a kit or should I buy these separate parts and like try and assemble them myself? But Apeks have just released for the 2022 season the WTX kit, basically. So there's 4 different versions, which is basically you either get the WTX D30 wing or the D40 wing. The 30 is £30, or actually I think it's about £32 in all honesty. But the D40 is about £40 of lift. And then you get the 2 different backplate options, whether it's aluminium or stainless steel. So depending on whether you're traveling or whether you want a bit of extra trim weight sort of in that backplate. So you got those 4 different versions. Again, they're on the Simply Scuba website. I think one of them I've pinched out of stock so that I can do a video, but the rest are available. Otherwise, a few new bits and bobs from our sort of surfing brethren. I try to combine those words and it failed. From Surf Dome, so Quicksilver and Roxy bits and bobs from their new 2022 ranges, with their like rash vests and wetsuits and all that kind of stuff. So and these sort of Roxy beach sporty rash guard suits as well. So to protect yourself from the sun, reducing the amount of sort of sun protection that you need that'll leach into the water, with some pretty funky new designs. So again, head over to Simply Scuba, and yeah, I'll put links to all of these down below. Moving straight on to social channel updates. So on the YouTube, Friday's AskMark, I was talking about sort of backplate setups, as well as a great question from someone who has a neoprene allergy. And in a previous episode, I've been talking about the top 5 or the first 5 things that you should invest in as far as equipment. But they said, oh, but I've got a neoprene allergy. Does that change anything? And yes, it absolutely would, because chances are that you're not going to have, if you need to rent a wetsuit diving abroad, I'd wager a lot that it's just going to be a standard school suit, traditional neoprene, and you are going to react to that. It's going to be pretty rare to find a neoprene alternative, especially if you just turn up on the day and say, hey, can I rent a wetsuit? If you give them a little bit of time, they might be able to do something for you, but I would not promise anything. So yeah, if you do have a neoprene allergy, it would be worth investing in your own exposure protection. And we do have a few sort of new ones out there. You get limestone based ones, and I'm not entirely sure how they affect or if people react to that. I've read in certain places that it's supposed to be more hypoallergenic, but I don't know if you do have a neoprene allergy whether you would react to limestone based neoprene. I don't know, I haven't actually looked into that. But also you get stuff like Ulex neoprene, which is plant-based this kind of foam neoprene alternative. So that's going to be much more sort of hypoallergenic. However, they only go up to about 3 or 4 mil thickness. So there's lots of sort of things that you have to consider. On with that, talking about my favourite courses to teach and recommended courses to do on your advanced open water. On Saturdays, Google answered. I answered questions about Simply Scuba because I thought that was a little bit different, a little bit sort of out of left field, and it's mainly because I started typing in scuba regulators, and I just felt like I answered a lot of those questions already. And on a different day, I was going to the website, and as you do, you just type in simply scuba, and instead of bringing up the website, it brought up the search results. And I thought, oh hey, that might be quite interesting, and the first result is Simply Scuba still trading? I was like, well, yes, but unfortunately the actual result was from a like a news article from back in 2019 when the previous company that owned Simply Scuba, which was Simply Scuba Limited, it's complicated, when they went into administration, and then of course it hasn't like corrected itself since. Internet Fusion Group, who's our new sort of owner, as it were, they bought Simply Scuba, and now we're definitely still trading. I wouldn't be here if we weren't. But yeah, I just sort of went down that rabbit hole and answered a bunch of those questions. On Sunday, the dive brief is on regulator first stages. I hadn't done a video like this in a little while. I've done similar ones, but not in the dive brief. And I basically just break down different regulator first stage designs and different like shapes for different uses and what they're good for and different things to consider. Because most people, when they're looking at regulators, they just look at like the second stage, the bit that actually goes in your mouth. But whatever, it is actually the first stage that's doing most of the work. So the actual metal clunky bit, that's the interesting bit that you should really be focusing on. And on Tuesday, in a couple of days' time, I did a Tuesday top tip on bolt snaps because I was quite surprised at myself that I hadn't done one already. I was looking at different things on sort of what tips and tricks that I could do it on, and I was looking through the previous version. I was like, I haven't done one just on bolt snaps. I was surprised at myself. So yeah, I did that. I don't think I came out with a full 10, but there are plenty of tips on bolt snaps and how to use them properly. Into scuba diving news, and if you type in scuba news, one of the big stories that sort of comes up is, or this week, is the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have been scuba diving on their as part of their Caribbean tour. They were diving on the Belize Barrier Reef. And it was all to sort of praise all of the benefits and work that has been sort of put into the area to ensure that coral reefs and fish are protected. And there's sort of lots of photos and videos of Prince William and Kate sort of swimming around. I think there's like a nurse shark or something cruising around them. So of course the news sort of goes, Kate and William go swimming with sharks as they enjoy deep sea diving at the Belize Barrier Reef. And it's just like, calm down, it's a nurse shark. But also, whenever I see it, I always just think, oh, can you imagine being the instructor or the dive guide to take the royal family or these two royals sort of out and about on a dive and just sort of making sure that everything sort of goes well. I mean, I know that that William is quite high up in BZAC. He's one of their, I don't know, patron saint, whatever you call it. He's big into his scuba diving, so I think he's fairly savvy. But also, you look at the equipment that they're using, and it just looks like bog standard like school gear that they're using. They didn't invest in any like new regulators to like sort of give them anything. They're like Oceanic Alpha 8s, which there's nothing wrong with them. I used to teach with them. They're a fantastic regulator, but they're what, I don't know, 10 years old or something. Alpha 8 was around, yeah, Struth, around like 2010, I think. And the front covers are sort of wonky because it's granted, it's really hard when you're putting that front cover back on to get it perfectly straight when you sort of tighten it up, but they're just like 90 degrees completely off. And Kate, bless her, she's got her sort of octo like dangling down and whatnot. But Yeah, no, they didn't like splash out and invest in any like new school regulators or anything. Saying that, I don't actually know. This might actually be William and Kate's actual dive gear. In which case, they probably need to splash a bit more cash on sort of regulators and getting some new equipment. But anyway, that's just the first thing that sort of springs to my mind as a former professional diver, as it were. But yeah, it's I'm in two minds with these kind of things. I do like the like news coverage because it gets like the general public and people who are into their royal families, they get to see and experience scuba diving a bit more, and that might then encourage them to sort of take up scuba diving, because there's lots of video sort of it, obviously, and they must have had a photographer as well, because there are some pretty cool photos coming out of it. So yeah, hopefully this will be sort of beneficial to the scuba diving industry, and it's nice that they are highlighting the work that has been going into sort of a lot of the coral reef restoration in the area. In Ridley, Pennsylvania, volunteer scuba divers have managed to crack a really old missing persons case. This comes from the YouTube channel Adventures with Purpose. Definitely worth checking out. They do some amazing things. This is very similar to another news story that we had a few weeks back, where scuba divers basically go out and they try and crack missing persons cases where years ago previously the police had sort of run out of leads, and it's suspected that they're most likely somewhere lost underwater, and they believe that they've sort of recovered the remains of James Amabile, who what they believe that he's diabetic, and they think that he might have had an issue with his diabetes whilst driving, and eventually ended up in Derby Creek. And so the divers from Adventures with Purpose went out with their scanners, and they did manage to find a matching vehicle with remains still inside. Obviously, they sort of contacted the Ridley Township Police sort of immediately, and sort of family members and whatnot have been sort of notified. Or actually, I think I read somewhere that they attempted to reach the family, but that they were unsuccessful for whatever reason. But yeah, this is a cold case from sort of late in 2003. So another case in which they've managed to like draw a line underneath it, and they do this all the time. There's lots of videos of their work, their amazing work that they do on their channel. So definitely sort of check them out. Again, there's going to be a link down in the description below, so you can check them out after this. In similar news over here in Scotland, a dumped vehicle recovery mission at a Scottish tank revealed several sort of cars dating back to the 1980s that have just been like dumped underwater. So this is it's never been used for like drinking water or anything, but there's been a number of concerns about sort of old cars in the sort of submerged underwater. So a team of specialist divers had to work very hard to sort of very carefully like strap up these cars and get them removed from the bottom of this tank after they were sort of exposed in hot weather last year. So the water levels started to sort of drop down, and people started to notice them finally after 30, 40 years in some cases. And yeah, they had to sort of send divers in to like assess it, assess the environmental impact of removing them as well, but also to sort of get them prepared to be hauled out of the water. But so these specialist divers, they found just an array of, I mean, they say vintage cars. It's like Vauxhalls, Fords, and Rovers, dating back to the 1980s, and they did manage to remove them all. I don't think they'll ever get them running again, but yeah, it is good to sort of get these out. Obviously, time has sort of lost why they sort of went in. I imagine it was all just to make them disappear for insurance reasons or whatever. But yeah, scuba divers back to the rescue to sort of prepare these cars and then sort of hand them over so that they can be disposed of properly, not just driven into a lake or wherever this was. And finally, off the coast of Tuscany, a Italian fisherman called Paolo Fanciulli who has basically turned himself into a local artist to help protect his local fishing grounds. In the late 1980s, he began to notice unmistakable signs of illegal trawling, and certain areas of the seabed was just becoming barren, and fish stocks were just rapidly depleting. So he he sort of thought of different things that he could do, and he's started to create, and he has created a wide range of just underwater sculptures that do two things. One, they protect the underwater realm, and two, it's something quite interesting, and it makes it a bit more legal, shall we say. In 2013, they started the Underwater House of Fish Sculpture Park, and when I say sculptures, some of these they're huge. They're like 15 tons or something. So big, huge sculptures, and of course you can't run your trawler nets over it because you're just going to damage your nets. So it's kind of win-win for the local environment and local fishermen. So this is all along the stretch of the Tuscan coastline near the town of Talamone, and just a whole range of these just huge stone sculptures now dot the seabed. I mean, Greenpeace they sort of got in trouble, but they didn't. They sort of got off once it went to the courts for doing something similar around in British waters. But they weren't like sculptures. They were just dropping huge boulders to prevent bottom trawling. But it's all to sort of prevent it, because it just does so much damage to the local environment when they use these bottom trawlers, because it just decimates everything. And this Italian fisherman, he equated it to, well, if you're hunting like for a boar in the forest, it's like if you burn down the entire forest just to catch the boar, it is not sustainable. So he's found this ingenious way to sort of prevent it. And also long term as well, because you're destroying a lot of the flora and fauna. You're destroying this carbon sink that absorbs all of this carbon dioxide, just so that you can catch some fish. So no, they're amazing sort of sculptures, and there's a great article in Euronews. I'll put links down in the sort of description below so that you can check it out. But yeah, now there's these underwater sculptures that I imagine that you can scuba dive. So yeah, it's a very clever way to sort of deter these sort of giant fishing trawlers and create some underwater artwork at the same time. And onto my product of the week, which this week is the Apeks Halo Lifeline Spool. Now, I'm not going to spend too much on this because I did talk about it a fair amount at the sort of the top of the show. But yeah, it's just something very different that I wasn't really expecting this season, and I think it does deserve more of a platform for people to notice and consider it, because especially when you're first starting out, you just sort of have a look around and you're at your local dive center or whatnot, and that is your kind of perception of what's available on the market. And this is very different to any of that. So yeah, it is worth considering, especially if you're just starting out, because a lot of divers nowadays, or sorry, I should clarify, a lot of dive charters nowadays require at least one diver of each buddy pair has their own DSMB, their surface marker buoy, for safety reasons. So as soon as you turn up, if you don't have one, of course, then you have to rent one. So that's an additional cost that you weren't expecting. So most divers end up investing in their own stuff. And this is a premium product. I'm not going to lie. It's not a bargain sort of budget option, but it is something very different, which if you do have mobility issues in your hands for whatever reason, or if you're diving in colder waters but you don't want that ratchet style reel because of moving parts and things jamming up and whatnot, this is a great alternative and something that's definitely worth considering. So yeah, that sort of made it as my product of the week this week. So yeah, definitely check it out, or at least sort of watch my video so you can sort of see what it looks like and how it works. And yeah, very, very different, very special, and I suppose time will tell on sort of how many people invest in that if sort of other manufacturers make something similar. But I've certainly not seen many other sort of similar things in my travels, apart from sort of in the kite community. I think it's existed for a fair while now, but definitely not in the scuba diving industry. But yeah, check it out. Again, links down in the description below. And inspired by the Lifeline Halo spool, this week's question is, why don't scuba divers like change? It's always been a kind of a joke between Sean and myself in that scuba divers don't like change, and we see it through all sort of walks of equipment in that we do get these progresses with, I mean, the most recent one was in the mask straps. You get those ski goggles style straps, and they started out, I think I saw the first one, Struth, probably about 6-7 years ago, and yeah, when I first tried it, it's an incredible product, and it's been incredibly slow to integrate that into just common. It's a normal thing. You do see it on a handful of masks nowadays, but that's it, just a handful. It's not that this is the premium mask strap that you get on their top headlining like flagship masks of certain brands. It's just, yeah, that is available, but only on this mask. So, and another great one is like Aqualung's i3 inflator. I think Mara's, they had air trim, like AT or something. So it's a different inflator style. Instead of having that traditional corrugated hose coming over your left-hand shoulder with 2 buttons on it, you have a little sort of flicky switch or something down on your left-hand hip. And you don't have that big clunky corrugated hose coming over your left-hand shoulder. It's just something, it's much more intuitive. First time I tried it, yeah, you figure it out immediately. And it is very intuitive because you don't have to sort of find that hose that migrates and moves around and lift it up to the highest point and do all that kind of stuff. You just have this little like flicky switch, and it definitely works. You can still orally inflate. You have a separate hose that tucks away, but it's a great like mechanism, and it doesn't really get adopted in huge numbers. You do see some of them kind of dotted around every now and then, but it's not commonplace. And this really comes down to that statement of scuba divers, we don't like change. We do change our like procedures from time to time. We're forever like updating and changing how we do things and how we teach things. But as far as like equipment goes, it's kind of slow to like make these changes and integrate these new, better from a certain point of view designs. And I think most of that comes down to just safety. I think is the main like instigator of sort of all of this. I mean, yeah, Mara's XR, they brought out the VR. I think it was also called the Loop in certain circles, regulator, and that had the hose. Instead of coming in from the side, it came in straight up from the bottom. And when they first announced that, a lot of people go, "What?" And but a lot of other people go, "Huh, that's clever." And it did make sense. For certain divers, it's helpful to have that hose routing option for it to come straight down. And it was mainly most of the, not protests, but the like sort of arguments against it, I suppose, as it were just down to training, in that we don't train new divers how to use this equipment. All of our training is based around this setup. That's it. And especially when you're first starting out, before that like Dunning-Kruger effect comes into it, you always want to stick to what you know, because there's still that air of like danger to scuba diving. It's like, right, do this, do that, and this is all about diver safety. And to veer away from that just is, is counterintuitive. So, and a lot of that comes down to sort of, well, this is how I was taught. This is what my instructor taught me to do. So this is how I'm going to pass that on to the next generation. And it's also quite hard when you're an instructor, you kind of want to have very similar equipment to your students to be able to demonstrate, because we can't talk. If you're like a snowboarding instructor or something, you can talk to your students and say, oh, okay, you've got this sort of style. I'm diving it in a slightly different style. So whilst I do this, with your one, you do it kind of this way. Whereas underwater, we can't communicate that effectively. So it really has to be, right, this is my setup. It's very similar to your setup, so that when you see me gesture to my inflate button or deflate or whatever it is, you can understand and go, oh, okay, he wants me to inflate my BCD or whatever it is. It's much more intuitive if you're wearing very similar, if not exactly the same equipment as your students. So what that would mean is if you did have an i3 system or something different, then your entire school equipment would have to change and update to that, so that your students understood. I get that you can have, right, I'm going to teach you how to sort of learn to dive on this school equipment, but this also exists. But that then just opens up a whole different avenue and rabbit hole of, right, this is the i3, this is how this works, and this is such and such, and this is like a dry suit, these are the different types of inflator. You just open up so many other doors, and you don't have that much time during a course to break down every little piece of equipment and different styles and how things work. So I think it mainly comes down to training, and I don't think there is a legitimate just way of fixing this. I think it is just something that the industry has to kind of get on with, and that's probably one of the main struggles as manufacturers of like, okay, I really want to create this new exciting design, something different is going to make scuba diving that much more comfortable, but how do I like invest in all of this technology and research and development if 2 years down the road, when it finally makes it to market, it doesn't actually sell because, oh, that's not what my instructor was using, so no, I don't want to invest in that. And I think that's going to be incredibly hard for manufacturers. And hopefully nowadays with social media and like the like our YouTube channel, that was one of the or that is one of the reasons why I like to demonstrate as much of the sort of product as possible in front of you, so that you can sort of see and go, oh, okay, that's a clever design, that's a bit different, but now I kind of know how it works, as it were, and I'm much more comfortable in investing it instead of just looking at a picture. No, that doesn't look like what my instructor is wearing. Skip. I think it's down to safety and just the training. But hopefully with like the new generation coming in and learning to scuba dive, they're a bit more adventurous in their like dive equipment styles, that we can start to like mix it up and see a few new designs and ideas coming through. So yeah, scuba divers, we don't like change. It's just one of those things in that a lot of time and effort has been spent like working out this regulator or this configuration is the safest it can be. This configuration is as safe as possible, and deviating from that just sort of makes it in some way feel less safe. So yeah, I think that's sort of mainly the sort of thing. But hey, I'm always up to sort of change and new technology and new things. So yeah, hopefully more scuba divers will be the same. And that is it for the podcast for another week. Thank you so very much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you are. If you can subscribe to the Instagram channel, that would make a world of difference. We're still sort of working our way up to 10,000 because that unlocks a lot of features for us to make your experience a little bit more interesting. And of course, the YouTube channel as well. That always needs sort of as many subscribers as possible. So if you're not subscribed, please, it'll make a big difference to us and sort of benefit us in the long run. Sort of that's it. If you do have any comments, questions, queries, or even corrections to anything that I've said, by all means let us know down in the comments below. And if you want me to sort of mention it in the Friday Q&A, if you use the hashtag AskMark, just hashtag AskMark, all one word, and then it pops up on my feed to check it out, basically. Remember to head over to simplyscuba.com. There's going to be lots of links to it sort of down below in everything that I've mentioned in this show. And thank you for listening, everybody. We're finally getting into the diving season. It is, believe it or not, getting slightly warmer. So start to dust off your dive equipment if you haven't been diving over the winter period. Double check that it doesn't need servicing. If it does, take it to your local dive center, get that serviced. Thank you for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.